All right, we are live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Nonprofit Leaders. And if you're here, please add a comment below to let us know you're here. I'm Nancy Manning, founder of Power Your Mission and also Nonprofit Meetup. Today, our guest is Brandon Parks. Brandon has held numerous leadership positions throughout his career and is currently the board chair for United Way of Greater Austin. So welcome, Brandon. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about United Way of Greater Knoxville?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Nancy, thank you so much for having me on today, and I look forward to our conversation. Again, my name is Brandon Parks, and from a career perspective, I work for a company called LEARFIELD. It is a collegiate sports marketing company, and if you noticed over my shoulder, Neyland Stadium, iconic football stadium here in the Southeast, I work out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And primarily am responsible for the corporate relationships that are shared between the University of Tennessee Athletics Program and the Vol Network. And as I will say, as a lifelong Knoxvillian, it was always a dream to go to school at Tennessee and then to be able to secure a job that I've now held for 20 plus years is pretty amazing for me. But grew up with my family. My parents made it a point in our lives that we always find something that we do in our life to help others. And I've tried to carry that with me now that I'm a parent myself, to teach my children the same thing. And when you start looking around and thinking about areas where you can spend time in the community, we all have busy schedules, and sometimes it's hard to be able to take on too much. But what I quickly learned was the United Way of Greater Knoxville was the biggest way that I could have the largest impact in our community. And so a little over 7 years ago, I became extremely active with our United Way here and have served in many roles in the organization as a volunteer over the years, and currently am the board chair for our United Way of Greater Knoxville. And let me just say, it's some of the most fulfilling work that I've ever done in my life.
Well, I'm excited, especially because I'm going to be moving to your area. And I did not know that you refer to yourselves as Knoxvillians. That's cool.
Knoxvillians, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think every one of us are partial to our specific communities. I'm extremely partial to Knoxville. In fact, the running joke in my business world is that my zip code has changed by one digit my entire life, which is true. But when you feel like you live in the best place in America, why move? And I think part of what makes Knoxville special is it is a very giving community that cares about our neighbors. And I think that's something that's just been born out of this, the generations before us in the Knoxville community. And hopefully we're trying to carry it on and pay it forward.
Fantastic. So you shared with me privately that United Way of Greater Knoxville just went through a period of transformational change. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. And we have gone through a period that's lasted a couple of years now. And then obviously this transformational change, not to make it any more complex, has occurred during the COVID pandemic, which has created its own series of problems. But the United Way of Greater Knoxville will be 100 years old this year in 2022. So we started in 1922. And it was originally called, I believe, the Community Chest of Knoxville, and later evolved into the United Way of Greater Knoxville. And historically, the organization had done an incredible job of running an annual campaign where we work with individual donors and then companies and company campaigns to raise funding in our community. And we would ultimately have an annual goal of fundraising. And then out of that funding, we would then support approximately 50 partner agencies in our community. And so that process and that way of doing business, if you will, for the United Way, really for 90 plus years was how it operated in Knoxville. And it was a wonderful way to touch a lot of partner agencies, nonprofit agencies that we have, and to touch a lot of lives. In fact, one of our marketing campaigns has historically been that we touch as many lives as you can place in Neyland Stadium, to give you a visual picture of the impact of the United Way. And that was fantastic. But I think 3 or 4 years ago, we started to realize that we as a nonprofit had to think about doing things differently. And how were we going to continue to exist moving into the future? Because the way people give has changed. And the way that my parents or my grandparents may have contributed to philanthropic initiatives is not necessarily how a younger person wants to give of their time, and also of their finances. And so we had to think about strategically ways that we could innovate and modernize ourselves so that we could be sustainable for another 100 years. And what's exciting about this is, as we celebrate our 100-year centennial, I think the way we're celebrating it is giving a nod to the past, but it's also giving a real look to the future and how we're going to do things maybe a little bit different, but a little bit more innovative. And continue to reach our community. So from a transformational standpoint, we continue to run an annual campaign, and that will always be a foundational piece for the United Way of Greater Knoxville. It is a way that we can truly impact the nonprofit community, who in a lot of instances, the United Way is the single largest funding mechanism for those organizations. So it's a lifeline. So that will continue. Where we have transformed and modernized, we had a goal of becoming the top name, the first name in the philanthropic community in Knoxville. Whenever there was a challenge or a problem arise in the community, we want community leaders to first think United Way of Greater Knoxville. We want to have a seat at the table whenever there is a significant issue in our community, and be someone that can be counted on and that can be leaned on a go forward basis. And so, market leadership, I think, was very important. And then the way that we react and that the way that we create funding initiatives for nonprofits or communities in need or individuals in need was a way that we needed to transform and modernize. Because our traditional campaign, that annual campaign, was an annual type 365-day campaign. So in some ways, it's sort of a slow process to raise all that money, and then the volunteers to go through the process of determining what applications to fund. And so it's a very long cycle. But COVID probably helped us in a lot of ways, because it created opportunities of immediate needs. And so, like most towns across the country, the need was real, and there were a lot of citizens in our community that were hurting financially, hurting with health. And so it almost served as an example of, here's how the modern United Way can operate. And so while we had an annual campaign that was ongoing, we immediately set up a COVID relief fund, and we were able to go out into the community and raise money, and then be able to use those dollars to immediately impact our community. And so being transformational in nature, that was what was important, was to be reactionary, and then also to be extremely proactive, and to think about where real needs exist, and then futuristically, what issues can we see on the horizon? And then how do we get out in front of those issues? How do we set up systems and programs to be able to address some of these significant needs that are coming? And so, again, in addition to our annual campaign, which is the foundation of what we do, our local United Way has set up specific initiatives around pre-K childcare, hunger, and housing. And we have a team on staff that are attacking each of these areas of need in our community and trying to get ahead and make a difference in those needs.
Can I ask a quick question?
You sure can.
Well, actually, I have about 10 questions. Don't have time for them all. But so when you talked about, in general, the supporting partner agencies. I'm assuming you mean nonprofits, and yes, and are they in certain areas like you talked about, childcare, or housing? Is there a broader reach too, or are you change? Is it like a foundation where you change your categories of giving every year? Is it that kind of thing?
Yeah, we focus on the annual campaign on nonprofits that really take care of financial stability, basic needs type categories. And so if you're a nonprofit in our community that are addressing any of those specific needs, then you have the opportunity to submit an application for funding. I want to be clear on one thing. We fund programs at nonprofits. So when a nonprofit submits their application, they are asking for funding to help fund an initiative or a program, not what I would call your back of house expenses and traditional operating type things. We want to know that those dollars that are going into the community are impacting the community, and we do that through programs.
Okay, we're starting to run out of time, but Cynthia's got a question. How did you balance the ask for sustaining what you already do with the new needs that arose with COVID?
That's a great question, and it's a long answer, but I'm gonna try to see if I can make it short and concise so we can talk about other things too. But what we realized, I think I mentioned this earlier, our donor base traditionally was starting to age, and we had donors that were getting older. But we did not have a good grasp on how we were attracting younger donors and how we were building sustainable relationships with them. And so there's been 2 or 3 initiatives that I have worked on specifically where we have gone to build relationships in the community with more and more people. So I think, how do we continue to ask for that annual campaign? But then we also ask for help for COVID or pre-K childcare. We're doing it more from an approach of building relationships with new and younger donors. And that's making a real difference for us.
That I can see where that would make a difference. And the world has changed, you're right. And as soon as you were said that, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be marketing, and you have that background. So United Way left out. Okay. So do you have any tips that you can provide to other nonprofit leaders in navigating a time of change as a leader of nonprofits?
Yeah, that's a great question because, and I think a lot of people, all of us need to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's a hard place to get to on a day in and day out basis. I think we had reached a point with our organization where futuristically we were looking at declines in giving. And then, is that truly sustainable long-term, 25 years now, 50 years from now? And you think about the generations that are going to come after us. And so we talked a lot about that. And basically you get to a place in that conversation where you realize, hey, we have to adapt. We have to change. We have to be different. And then once you can get over that, what was amazing here was the number of opportunities that have come our way the past 2 to 3 years, just because our messaging changed, just because we said, hey, we are open to doing more things. We want to do more things. We want to be involved in more strategic initiatives in our community. And so a lot of that goes back to marketing and messaging and relationship building. And our CEO did a fantastic job with building relationships with significant community leaders here, both in the public community with city and county government, but then also with the corporate community. And out of those conversations, it's just opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, to the point now as his board chair, I've told him this, hey, we have so much in front of us. We're going to have to strategically pick what truly fits our mission, because we can't, at this point, we can't do everything and do everything well.
Another fortunate thing for you all is having, when you guys merged with Allison's, what is it called? East Tennessee Volunteers. What is it?
Yeah, you're right. We actually have had 2 mergers. One was the Alliance for Better Nonprofits.
Oh, yeah.
And then Volunteer East Tennessee, which is where Allison was at.
and she's got that, the way she's operating in that, the connection with the corporate world too. That's that whole other, you guys really bring it in together.
Well, I'll tell you what we found is when you start having some of these conversations with like nonprofits, you realize you have a lot of things that are alike. And you also realize that certain, like Volunteer East Tennessee is a good example. We are always going to have a need with the United Way of Greater Knoxville of having access to volunteers and more volunteers. And so they fit a niche within our umbrella that makes a lot of sense. The Alliance of Better Nonprofits is another good example. They were doing business in Knoxville trying to help nonprofits run themselves efficiently. And so those conversations fell right into, well, we're funding nonprofits. So how can we streamline and do these things together? So I'm going to tell you, it's exciting and it's been a ton of fun as the board chair.
All right. Well, again, this 15 minutes goes by quickly. We're at the end. I want to thank you. I can't wait to get to know you all a lot better when I move out there. And I want to remind our folks that are watching to join us next Tuesday for my guest, Marcia Silverberg. And it's always the same time, same place. And don't forget about the meetup this month, The Good Bones of Nonprofit Leadership with Mike Burns. So thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you, people who joined us today. And we'll see you again. Thank you, Brandon.